Time to preview the Saturday race of the day. It's the Grade 1 Travers, race number 13 on Saturday, August the 24th at Saratoga. I'm Gino Buccola alongside David Aragona. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Daily Racing Form YouTube. Make sure to subscribe right below so you can get videos just like this for all the big races. David, I thought the Travers field ended up being a pretty good one in here. We have a lot of the heavy hitters. It'll be very fun to see Thorpedo Anna, who has been the best of the 3-year-old fillies, take on the boys in here. You've installed her at 3-1, a very logical player in here. We have Leone, who's been towards the top of the division all throughout, along with Dornoch, who's now stamped himself as the top of the division. Fierceness coming off of a big victory last time out. So a really interesting group lining up with this field of 8 in the Travers.
Yeah, after the classic races were run this spring, it felt like it was going to be up to the Travers to settle this 3-year-old male division where we had different winners of those races and a lot of horses that had run big performances but had sort of done so as one-offs, so they really had to show that they could back it up. Dornoch did that to some extent in the Haskell. Now he's got to do it against a tougher field in this Travers, and we now have the addition, as you said, of the filly, Thorpedo Anna, trying the males for the first time after being so dominant against her own gender, so it really sets up as the Travers that I think we're hoping for. All the major players made it to this race, and I'm really excited to see how it plays out.
The pace looks like it's going to be at least honest. Let's take a look at the Timeform US pace projector and see what they think. And they have it projected and coded for a fast pace, David. And that's really no surprise, especially with the way that some of these horses are drawn. I think with Thorpedo Anna being down on the inside, she's not a horse who's been a need the lead type, but she'll probably want to be forward and get away and get good positioning there. You have Dornoch, you have Fierceness, who we know want to be forwardly placed. Unmatched Wisdom has been close in all 3 of his starts. I wouldn't be shocked if they want to try to get Batten Down even closer to the lead in here, because he was kind of a little flat-footed in his most recent start in the Jim Dandy. So I really wouldn't be shocked to see any combination of 4 or 5 different horses looking for early position here.
Yeah, and what I'll say about this Timeform US pace projector is that it's a representation of pace figures. What it's not is a mind reader. And I think we can't know exactly what the tactics are going to be for the connections and the jockeys, especially with regard to the number 1 Thorpedo Anna, because based on the pace figures, she is fast enough to get in front of horses like Dornoch and Fierceness in the early stages. We saw her show that early speed when she led the Kentucky Oaks every step of the way through some pretty honest splits. But I think you have to wonder if they're going to be looking to get that kind of trip with her in this Travers with those formidable speed rivals drawn towards the outside, trying the 1.25 mile distance for the first time, her first time racing against the males. That could be a taxing trip, so I won't be surprised if they look to slot her in behind those speeds, getting a pocket trip. And then you still have Dornoch and Fierceness, who could be battling that out on the front end. And we know it could be pretty tough to get by Dornoch when he gets his head in front in any race.
Let's take a look at the field, and we'll start with Thorpedo Anna down on the inside. Yeah, not only will she have to face the boys for the first time, so she's getting the acid test, she has to prove it at 1.25 miles and face probably 5 horses better than maybe any horse she's ever faced so far. Here she is with an easy win last time in the CCA Oaks, and she's just shown us she's better than this group of fillies right now, David.
I love that the connections are running in this race. Whether or not you want to bet on her, it's just a great thing for racing fans to get a sense of how good this 3-year-old filly really might be, because we know that she is so much better than the horses in her division. She didn't have to prove anything running in the Alabama last week, and now we get to find out, is she really a generational talent among the 3-year-old fillies? The speed figures say maybe, but it's not totally clear. I'm not going to be too hard on her for only getting a 95 by her last time out in that CCA Oaks that we just watched, because she had a really tough start that day. She blew the break, left the gate about 2 lengths behind the fastest breaker that day, had to rush up between horses to get into her typical stalking position. So I think she might have run a lot better than that ultimate speed figure indicates, but still, she's going to have to improve on her best performance to beat this field. And I think she's also going to get a trip that might be unfamiliar to her, because when you go through her form, she's had the fortune of drawing outside of other speed in almost all of her races. And the one time that she didn't was the Kentucky Oaks, where they sent her forward to lead every step of the way. I don't know if they want to send her forward to try to lead this Travers from gate to wire, and she's not drawn outside of horses like Dornoch and Fierceness, who might be trying to cross over in front of her early. So she might have to sit in the pocket for the first time in her career, take some kickback. That's just an additional question on top of her facing tougher competition that makes me a little reluctant to play her at what is going to be one of the shorter prices.
I think how you finish it is the key to all of those factors on top of her popularity. She's going to take a lot of money and probably be a little bit lesser value than you would want want to take with her chances of winning this race. But so excited as a racing fan that they come and they take a shot in here. As you pointed out, what would she have gained in winning that race in the Alabama? Not much. Now we can really have a fun Saturday and see the filly against the boys. We move to Sierra Leone right next door. For this grade one winner, it feels like it's been forever since he's won his last race. It's really only his last three. He's just over his last three races. And you sort of just know what you're going to get from him. He's going to sit back. He's going to launch late. He's going to make a big rally. In his most recent race, he had to duck down to the inside when Fierceness ended up going a little bit wider out in the middle of the track in the Jim Dandy. And in this particular race, David, it does seem like it should set up pretty well for him with more than half of this field wanting to be forwardly placed. And he feels like he's going to take back and be where he normally is, towards the back of this field.
His PPs are starting to resemble a Chad Brown Bluegrass winner from a few years ago in Zandon, who won that race so impressively. And you kept thinking, well, this is the time he's going to get the grade one. No, this is the time he's going to get the grade one. And he just never could quite do it and kept settling for minor awards. I think Sierra Leone's a little better than that horse from a few years ago because he's running speed figures that put him right in the mix, make him one of the horses to beat in here. He's just not quite sealing the deal in his races, and you can make those minor excuses. He was lugging into the stretch of the Derby, got that bumping match with Forever Young. Maybe they should have been the top two finishers in that race. The Belmont Stakes, perhaps that was a speed favoring track that worked against him. And last time out in the Jim Dandy, the good Fierceness showed up. He got the perfect trip that they were hoping for, and Sierra Leone maybe just had too much to do that day. Again, lugging in through the stretch, and does have that tendency to lose a little focus, want to drift down towards the rail, and that's not really going to help him get the job done in a race like this. So I think he is one of the horses that you can rely on to hit the board in this race. It's just a question of how short a price you want to take on a horse that has been a little disappointing over his last several starts.
With his running style, it always feels like he's going to find another horse or two that just get better trips than he does. And that's what it comes down to a lot of times when you have these horses that are evenly matched. He's going to find a horse who has more tactical speed, maybe a couple of them that have been able to just get better trips. And we'll see if one of these days, maybe he can be the horse that gets the best trip. The number 3 in here is a very intriguing wild card, David. Unmatched Wisdom is a perfect 3 for 3. He won the Curlin most recently, and I believe we have a replay of that win. And at the top of the lane, he was challenged by Corporate Power. He turned away that challenge and opened up, and he's a little green in here as he's still figuring things out, but he has a load of talent and ability. And in this type of race, I'm looking for kind of a new face. And I think you are kind of high on this horse as well. Unmatched Wisdom is one of those new faces who we don't really know how good he is yet.
This is going to be a big test for this horse, but I don't think that there's any mistake that this horse does have a lot of talent. We've seen that so far in his races, the way that he won those first two starts, albeit against inferior competition, but doing so impressively. And then last time out, he got his first real challenge from a nice horse in Corporate Power in the Curlin, was able to turn that one away. And the thing that I love about this horse watching his replays is he doesn't strike me as one of these headstrong horses that needs to be on the lead. When you watch his races, even though he's got natural tactical speed, as soon as he hits the front every time, the ears go up. Like he's waiting on the rider's cues to know what to do. We saw that a couple times through the stretch of the Curlin. He looked like he put away Corporate Power. The ears went up. It looked like he lost a little focus. Corporate Power came back to him. He kicked on again. He even switched to his left lead coming to the wire. This is a horse that is still figuring things out. And I don't think he's going to be one that they're going to ride into the pace this day. I think they're going to look to take him off the pace. And I won't be surprised when he's actually able to find a little bit more chasing horses, because it seems like that's more in keeping with his disposition to want to run after horses and catch a target. He's been training really well coming into this, and I don't think he's going to be that short a price with those 4 major players taking the bulk of the wagering support.
The number 4 is Corporate Power. He was the runner-up in that race behind Unmatched Wisdom. He won the Sir Barton back in May at Pimlico. And sometimes as gamblers, we can get a little bit too cute. We can overthink things, David, and maybe I'll be doing that in here with Corporate Power, who I like a little bit. But I'm trying to map out the trips in this race. And as we looked at Timeform US and the pace projector and playing it out in my head, I think there are a group of 5 horses that will all be forwardly placed and looking for that early position. And it looks like there are 2 of the deeper closers in here with Sierra Leone and with Honor Marie, who I think are going to be dropping back. We'll see with Honor Marie with the blinkers coming on, but I'm expecting them to be towards the back. And then I think right in between, you could have Corporate Power, who may not be as good as a lot of the horses in here, but from a trip standpoint, I'm wondering if he could get that really nice trip where he's sitting behind that first group of speed horses. He gets the jump on the deeper closers. He'll definitely have to keep improving, but he did improve quite a bit on the speed figures last time out. He's a lightly raced horse, and he's a horse who hasn't done a whole lot wrong. So I'm kind of looking for a new face in here, and I think you were too with Unmatched Wisdom. I'll go with the horse that was right behind Unmatched Wisdom. Talk to us a little bit about Corporate Power.
For me, Corporate Power feels a little bit like a Sierra Leone in training because he's got that same tendency to want to lug in his races. He's still a little bit green, doesn't have it all figured out. We saw him leaning on rivals late in the Sir Barton, where it felt like both he and the runner-up in that race, Gould's Gold, were trying to do everything they could to lose that race by drifting all over the track. And in the Curlin last time, it felt like he had dead aim at Unmatched Wisdom at the top of the stretch. And it seemed like for a second, the quarter pole, like he was going to get there, and Unmatched Wisdom had a little bit more to kick away at the end. Corporate Power, though, never quit. He was still running on arguably strongest of all through the wire that day. I don't really have questions about the distance for him. It's just a matter of whether or not he can put it all together on the big day and take that step forward. And I do think he's one that might get some pace to close into. We'll see if he can take that next step in the Travers.
Another one of the long shots in here is Batten Down, who was third in the Jim Dandy behind Fierceness and Sierra Leone. He was a little flat-footed, and then he kind of got pinned down on the inside. Wasn't the most ideal trip for him, and he finished third at the top of the lane. He was up to contend with Fierceness, and he was put away pretty easily by the top two that day. But I think he's improving, and they take a shot in here, and he's a horse who I think probably be pretty content with hitting the board. But I feel like he will get really dismissed in here, and if you're looking for some of the underneath exotic horses, I would be okay with him. Just what kind of trip can he get, and how good really is he? Does he stack up with this group? What do you think about Batten Down in this spot?
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add to your analysis about him. I agree with the trip and the Jim Dandy. He was a little slow away from the gate, had to, basically forced to rate in that spot behind some other horses that were just a little quicker away from the blocks. And he was very successful 2 and 3 back, but did so with perfect trips, uncontested leads. He's not going to get that kind of trip in here. He still has to prove to me that he's quite this good as a stalking type in a race against the best 3-year-olds in the land.
Honor Marie got bumped around a bit at the start last time out in the Belmont, was maybe 15 lengths off at one point, but I thought he closed pretty well that day to finish fourth. Now the blinkers come on, and for a horse like this, an equipment change could be a really big deal, David, because this is a horse who's definitely flashed ability. I picked him a couple starts back. I think you picked him or had him very high up in the Belmont on your radar. What do you think about him now in this spot, not having a race in quite some time also, and adding the equipment? Does that bother you when we haven't seen him run since June the 8th?
As a trip handicapper, he's a horse that kind of draws you in because he was so impressive making that big run from last to first in the Kentucky Jockey Club at the end of his 2-year-old season. And since then, he's had some trips, the slow pace in the Risen Star, the Kentucky Derby, where he lost all chance at the start of the race. Even the Belmont, he got slammed at the start and was so far back over a speed favoring surface last time. So you can make some excuses for him. I still wonder where his ceiling really is. And you have to keep coming back to his running style and how many chances do you want to give a horse that just doesn't have any early speed and is always going to put himself in a position where he's got to be so much better than his rivals because he's got all that ground to make up from the start? The blinkers, maybe they get him a little bit more engaged. I like the recent workout that I watched back on August 10th with the blinkers. It seems like they really have him a little more dialed in, but I don't love to take horses off blinker switches. Sometimes they mess with the running style too much. So he's going to be a big price in here. I'll use him somewhere underneath, but I think he's a little tough to make at this point as a win candidate.
Number 7 is the Grade 1 Belmont winner, the Grade 1 Haskell winner, Dornoch. Fascinating trajectory of his career because he was very good early on at 2 and very precocious last year. And then this year, David, I think after the 4 races he had run prior to the Belmont, you saw him in the Fountain of Youth. He was in the Bluegrass, the Kentucky Derby. So those 3 races, I think a lot of people have kind of soured on him and thought that maybe he just hadn't taken the step forward. He didn't really seem like he was a horse progressing, seemed like a pretty one-dimensional type horse. And then came the Belmont, a big victory, and he came right back and showed it was no fluke. with the win in the Haskell, he beat the same horse back-to-back races in the same sort of replay where he was down on the inside. It looked both times like Mindframe was going to go by him, and Mindframe got a little bit green, was kind of zigging and zagging and drifting out, and Dornoch digs in. He's just a really tough horse to pass. When he's lined up with you in the stretch, he does not want to give in. And here is Dornoch down on the inside last time in that Haskell race. How do you feel about Dornoch now in this spot with a good amount of other speed in here?
In retrospect, when you look back at his form, it seems so clear that it's all trip dependent with Dornoch. When he gets his head in front at some point in these two-turn races, he just wins. He doesn't lose. And that wasn't the case in the Bluegrass. They stated beforehand they were going to plan to rate him that day. It didn't work out. He had that awful trip in the Kentucky Derby where he was just eliminated at the start, so wasn't able to get his preferred trip. But his other 5 dirt routes where he's able to get forward early, he's won them all. So I don't know what's supposed to be different in this race. In a weird way, he's the horse that's coming in with the least to prove because he's already done it the last couple of times against top competition. And Mindframe, who he beat, he's not back in this field. He had a setback, but he's a really good horse. I mean, he would be among, it would be the 5 favorites if Mindframe were in this Travers Stakes. And Dornoch, you don't have to worry about the 1.25 mile distance. He handled it 2 back in the Belmont Stakes when he survived an honest pace to hold off Sierra Leone and Mindframe, actually drawing away a little bit at the end. I just think he's the most reliable horse coming in here. I know Danny Gargan's been a little quiet at the Saratoga meet, but you watch this horse's recent workouts. He's never been the flashiest workhorse in the morning, and I would argue he's doing better than I've ever seen him coming into this race. So I think Dornoch is clearly the horse to beat.
Yeah, of the speed horses, I think he's the best and the most proven of them, and the one that I sort of trust the most as we move to one of those other speed horses drawn to his outside, and that's Fierceness, who's become such a fascinating horse. I mean, you look at his victories, and they've all really been when he's getting a perfect trip, when he's able to move early to the lead, when he's not having to encounter any type of traffic, and he's very impressive when he gets those trips. Last time out in the Jim Dandy, we had that backtrack victory of him right here beating Sierra Leone when Sierra Leone has to duck down to the inside and Fierceness is out in the middle of the racetrack. I mean, this is a good performance from him, David. I just wonder, is he going to get that trip that we've seen him win with in 4 of his victories? Will he be able to sit just outside the speed? Maybe he will. Maybe Dornoch goes and he can sit just outside of him. I just feel like this race is going to shape up a little bit more difficult with Dornoch, with Batten Down trying to get a little aggressive, with Thorpedo Anna from the inside, with the possibility of Unmatched Wisdom being up in the mix with all of them. I just don't know if it plays all that well for Fierceness. How do you think the race shapes up for him in this spot?
Well, he certainly got the right draw to get the trip that I think his connections are hoping for. And he's a horse who's been pretty lucky with post-position draws throughout his career, always drawing towards the outside. And it still doesn't always work out for Fierceness. He's got that up and down pattern where he always follows up a huge effort with a regression. I don't want to get too caught up in patterns like that, but I do think it's interesting to go back to Todd Pletcher's initial gut reaction after the Jim Dandy, which was, we want to point to the Pennsylvania Derby. We want to skip the Travers. We're a little worried about his weight and running back on short rest. And now Mindframe, his stablemate who was going to run in the Travers, goes to the sidelines, and suddenly Fierceness is redirected to this race. And I'm sure he's doing well. I mean, he's probably just fine physically, but there's that question mark about whether he could put together those 2 big efforts back to back, only separated by 28 days. I don't want to take a short price on that prospect because this horse has been pretty unreliable. There's no question he's one of the most naturally talented runners in this division, but not only do you have to overcome that inconsistency, but also I don't know that he's really a 10 furlong horse. I still have that question in the back of my mind about true stamina for Fierceness. So at the likely short price, and I won't be surprised when he's actually vying for favoritism in this race, he's one that I've got to take a shot against.
Let's take a look at how we are going to approach this race from a gambling standpoint. David, we're both looking for a new face. We're going against that top tier of contenders in here. You're going to put Unmatched Wisdom on top.
And let me say, I think Dornoch is way the horse to beat in this race. I think he is the most likely winner, and it's not that close. I just feel like I kind of missed the opportunity to cash on Dornoch, especially 2 back in the Belmont, and even last time in the Haskell when he was somehow a bigger price than Timberlake that day. He's maybe not going to be the favorite in this race. We'll see how they bet it, but he's going to be among the shorter prices. And I think this is an opportunity to maybe catch more value on a horse like the number 3 Unmatched Wisdom, who is still a little unexposed coming in here. He's beaten up on weaker competition, but just watching this horse's replays, I feel like there's more there than we've even seen so far, and he's trained well coming in here. The rider choice of Flavien Prat going to Sierra Leone over this horse maybe might take some people off him, but I'm not going to view that as a negative. I know that was a tough choice for Flavien, so I'm going to stick with Unmatched Wisdom here. I think he's a horse that has real talent, but I think you're going in a similar direction with a horse that's going to be an even bigger price.
Yeah, I think with the short price proven horses, there are some concerns that we have, right? With Dornoch, with Fierceness, we're a little bit concerned if they want to go this far, or maybe if there's other pace in here, or how the race shapes up. With Sierra Leone, it's the opposite, right? For a horse who has to come from way out of it. You and I have the 2 and the 7, Sierra Leone and Dornoch, as sort of the proven measuring stick horses for here, but we're both going a little outside the box, taking a fun swing at maybe a little pricier horse who we're hoping can get the trip, because it sounds like for you, you'd like to see Unmatched Wisdom maybe sit off the pace a little bit and not go head on head with some of the others. And that's what I'm hoping for with Corporate Power in here as well. So one of the biggest races of the year is the Travers. It's the biggest race of the weekend. It's the Saturday race of the day. You get free past performances at drf.com. However you're playing, we wish you the best of luck.